Okay, I want to move on to the Civil War. Let's see how I'm doing here. Yeah, quickly. Although the Civil War is the moral core of American history, it was nonetheless part of the larger history of 19th century liberalism, the invention of the modern nation state, and an Atlantic-wide rejection of unfree labor. 1848 is the key date. It's the date of the treaty bringing the Mexican War to an end, which was in fact the trigger in Congress for the Wilmot Proviso that made slavery a national political issue that would not go away. At the same time, the European revolutions of 1848 not only prompted Elizabeth Cady Stanton to organize the famous Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention, but it deeply stirred Abraham Lincoln. What was the Revolution of 1848 in Europe about? Briefly, it was about nationalism and freedom, and that the nation was the vehicle for achieving freedom. Lincoln grasped that linkage, and as a legislator in Illinois state legislature, he authored a testimonial to Louis Kossuth of Hungary, the most famous of the revolutionaries of 1848. He also understood the definition of a nation that they were articulating, and it is, I believe, the source of one of his most famous phrases, "A nation divided cannot stand." For 1848ers, the nation was a bounded, homogeneous body. The concern was that the space of culture and the space of decision-making or government ought to be congruent. For Kossuth, that homogeneous space was defined by language, Magyar. For Lincoln, that space was to be defined by free labor. The quest for modern nationhood transformed the issue of slavery, which had been a matter of political compromise up to this point, into a matter of national self-definition. The United States before the war was not a modern nation state. It was what might be called an enhanced confederation. Frederick Jackson Turner compared it to the Congress of Vienna, the kind of balancing mechanism. In the U.S. version of that was for every slave state admitted to the Union, a free state had to be admitted. And this is the basis of various compromises. One can see the shift from confederation to nation in grammar and in vocabulary of the period. After the Civil War, the United States became a singular noun. From the United States are to the United States is. Lincoln's language is also revealing. In his inaugural address, he used the word union 29 times, but never once used the word nation. In his Gettysburg Address in November of 1863, a very short address, as you know, 269 words, he used the word nation 5 times, promising a rebirth of freedom in a nation. I do not think we can quite recognize the passions of Lincoln as well as of ordinary soldiers without taking account of the ideas of 1848 and the novel understanding of nation then in circulation around the globe. If state building was the institutional accomplishment of the Civil War, the moral achievement, of course, was the emancipation of more than 4 million enslaved people of African descent. It is important, however, to keep in mind that the years between 1848 and 1870 was virtually a global age of emancipation that witnessed the emancipation, besides the 4 million American slaves, in the emancipation of 40 million unfree laborers in various European states and empires or their colonies. The crisis of union was also part of a larger federative crisis in which nations from Argentina to Japan, from Germany to Siam, from the Russian and Ottoman empires to the Habsburg were participants. All were recalibrating the relations between national and local authority. In most cases, wars were a part of the story. Nation-making was a global phenomenon with common themes but local distinctive results. And as with the American Revolution, so did the Civil War have an impact on Europe. It represented a central contribution to liberalism in the Atlantic world. It demonstrated to European liberals that democracy was strong enough a form of government to sustain itself. This was extremely important to European liberals. There were many predictions that the United States would fall apart. Democracy couldn't work. For them, including Kossuth, John Stuart Mill, Giuseppe Mazzini, and Giuseppe Garibaldi, the American Civil War was a central episode in the history of liberal reform. New understandings of nation freedom and national territory were being played out on every continent. In one way, the Civil War brings us back to the historiographical observations I offered at the outset. It was in collaboration with this new state form, forged in the Civil War and its global equivalents, from Germany to Argentina, Italy to Japan, from France to Hungary, that modern historiography assumed the task of making national citizens by producing a shared history of a bounded, homogeneous nation. It is fitting in a way that the beginnings of professional academic historical study is usually dated with the founding of Johns Hopkins University in 1876, when the deal was being made to end Reconstruction in the South. Its famous history seminar focused on the colonial period and, along with Columbia University, focused on Civil War and Reconstruction. Historians helped define the nation by the story these histories told. Shared memory makes a nation. It not only distinguishes one nation from another, but it also defines the terms of inclusion. In 1882, Ernest Renan, leading French historian, key figure in the making of the Third Republic, published an essay entitled, "What is a Nation?" He made the important point that a nation is not a racial category, but the result of a shared memory, but also, and this is his most crucial insight, a matter of selective and strategic forgetting. Historians have played a role in both remembering and forgetting. The first academic historians of Civil War and Reconstruction did some very selective remembering that effectively taught that America was a white man's country. Scholarship on the Civil War commended the abolition of slavery, but consistently condemned the wrong-headed attempt of Reconstruction to secure and protect the citizenship of African Americans. These histories legitimated a reign of denied rights, Jim Crow, and lynching. A whole new historiography since the 1970s, propelled by the Civil Rights Movement, radically revised that history, particularly the history of Reconstruction, giving us a fuller history that contributes to legitimating a more inclusive understanding of our nation and our collective identity and citizenship for all. My hope now is that our transnational and global efforts at writing and teaching the American story will bring us into a more cosmopolitan relationship with the world of which we are a part. I hope such a history will, as I put it in the introduction to A Nation Among Nations, encourage and sustain a cosmopolitan citizenry, at once proud nationals and humble citizens of the world. Thank you.